The frost came early to the Ardennes in December 1944. It coated the pine needles in silver, turned the forest floor into glass, and made every breath visible in the air. The trees stood like sentinels, dark, silent, watching, as young men dug into frozen earth with frozen hands, carving out shallow graves that would become monuments to mystery. For 56 years, 3 soldiers would remain beneath that soil. 3 names on a wall. 3 families without answers. 3 graves that the world forgot, until 2 men with metal detectors refused to let them stay forgotten. The hill had no name when the war reached it. German artillerymen, ranging their feared 88mm guns across the ridgeline, gave it the only designation it would ever need: 88 Hill, a coordinates on a map, a piece of contested ground southeast of Monschau, Germany, where the forest grew so thick that daylight barely reached the floor, and where the earth still bore the scars of bunkers and trenches from an older war. It was here, in those final days before hell erupted across the Western Front, that the 99th Infantry Division, green troops, untested, arriving in theater just weeks before, found themselves holding a quiet sector of the line. The Checkerboard Division, they called themselves, for the patch they wore. College boys, many of them. Bright minds pulled from universities across America through the Army Specialized Training Program. Young men who had been studying engineering and physics and literature, now studying how to stay alive in a forest that smelled of pine and cordite and approaching winter. Among them were 3 who would never leave. Jack Beckwith was 20 years old, born in Lemoore, North Dakota. He grew up dreaming of becoming an aviator, of escaping the prairie flatness for the infinite sky. The Army had other plans. When the ASTP program dissolved in March 1944, drained to feed the insatiable hunger of the infantry, Jack found himself at Camp Maxcy, Texas, trading textbooks for a Browning automatic rifle. Jack carried it to Company C, 395th Infantry Regiment, 99th Division. He carried it across the Atlantic. He carried it into the Ardennes forest in December 1944. Saul Kokotovich was 20 years old, born November 20th, 1924, in Gary, Indiana, to Serbian immigrants. Saul found meaning in books and in a girl named Martha. Like Jack, he had qualified for ASTP. Like Jack, he ended up at Camp Maxcy when the program crumbled. But unlike Jack, Saul made time for one ceremony before shipping overseas. In the small chapel at Camp Maxcy, 19-year-old Saul Kokotovich married his longtime girlfriend. The Army photographer captured them smiling, impossibly young, dressed in dress uniform and borrowed white. They had hours together, days perhaps. Then Saul boarded a ship, a bar slung across his back, and sailed toward a forest he had never heard of, toward a hill that had no name. David Reed was 19 years old, born February 8, 1925, in Hudson, Ohio. Another ASTP casualty, another bright mind redirected toward the infantry. But David's burden was different. Instead of a bar, he carried a radio. 20 pounds of electronics strapped to his back, connecting him to the artillery, to command. Cannon Company 395th Infantry, the same regiment as Jack and Saul, though different companies. 3 young men, 3 paths converging on the same frozen hillside in December 1944, toward a moment that would erase them from the present and consign them to 56 years of silence. December 13th, 1944. 3 days before the world exploded. The 395th Infantry Regiment received orders to attack. V Corps was pushing toward the Roar River dams, and the 99th Division would participate. The objective? 2 hills fortified with German bunkers, part of the Westwall defenses. The terrain was nightmare. Dense forest, muddy trails. The path they followed, Hasselpath, ran parallel to the 2nd Infantry Division's route, and every step forward was a step deeper into what the Germans called the Siegfried Line. Jack, Saul, and David climbed with their units through December 13th and into the 14th. The German artillery found them early, always the artillery. The Wehrmacht's gunners had ranged every hilltop, and the forest erupted with the distinctive crack of 88mm shells, the sound that gave the hill its name. By December 15th, they had taken their objectives, bunkers captured, trenches cleared, and now they dug in atop Hill 627, preparing for the counterattack that everyone knew was coming.
Vernon Swanson shared a foxhole with Jack Beckwith. They were foxhole buddies, the bond that transcends friendship in combat. Vern would later remember Jack as steady, calm, the kind of soldier you wanted beside you when the shells started falling. The shells started falling on December 15th, just after midnight. German artillery had registered their positions perfectly. The barrage came in waves, high explosive, then shrapnel, then high explosive again, methodical and relentless. Saul Kokotovich took a direct hit, not from shell fragments, but from the concussion, the overpressure wave that turns organs to jelly and stops hearts without leaving visible wounds. He was dead before anyone reached him. Dead at 20 years old, married for months, lying in frozen mud 6,000 miles from Gary, Indiana. David Reed fell to the same barrage, 19 years old, radio still strapped to his back, now silent. Jack Beckwith lasted one more day. On the night of December 15th, Vern Swanson stepped out of their foxhole briefly. When Jack returned to check their position, flame and thunder erupted from nowhere. Another 88mm shell, finding its target with cruel precision. Vernon was thrown clear. Jack Beckwith was not. Shrapnel tore through his left leg, his abdomen, his skull. Swanson screamed for medics, but even as they rushed forward, Jack Beckwith died at 20 years old, died dreaming of skies he would never fly. The medics did what they could. There was a forward aid station on the reverse slope of 88 Hill, barely more than a clearing. They brought Jack's body there, and Saul's. and David's. 3 young men laid side by side, covered with ponchos. Then on December 16th, 5:30 in the morning, the world caught fire. Hitler's last gamble began with searchlights. Through that eerie glow, 200,000 German soldiers surged forward in the largest offensive the Western Front had seen since 1940. The Battle of the Bulge had begun. The 99th Division found itself directly in the path of the 6th SS Panzer Army's northern thrust. Orders came down the chain at 0700 hours on December 17th. Withdraw. Retreat to Elsenborn Ridge. Colonel Alexander Mackenzie, commanding the 395th Infantry, faced an impossible choice. His regiment had to move fast, had to abandon anything that would slow them down. That included the dead. The medics worked frantically on the reverse slope of 88 Hill, burying soldiers in shallow graves scratched from the frozen earth. They marked some with rifles thrust bayonet first into the ground, others with twigs bearing dog tags, crude markers that said, "We did not forget you. We will come back." Jack Beckwith's grave received a twig marker, his dog tag attached. Saul Kokotovich's grave the same. David Reed's the same. Then the 395th Infantry melted into the forest, leaving their dead behind, with a promise that felt increasingly hollow with every step towards safety. The Battle of the Bulge would rage for 6 weeks. More than 19,000 American soldiers would die. And when the smoke finally cleared in late January 1945, the U.S. Army Graves Registration units moved through the forests. They searched 88 Hill. They found other graves, recovered other soldiers. But Jack Beckwith, Saul Kokotovich, and David Reed remained hidden beneath pine needles, their markers lost, their exact locations forgotten, their status changed from killed in action to missing in action, to, eventually, unrecoverable. The army sent telegrams. The families received the news that every family dreads. Jack's mother, Verlee, kept his photograph on her mantle for 49 years. Saul's wife, Martha, never remarried. David's 4 brothers grew up with an empty chair. And 88 Hill kept it secret for 56 years.
Jean-Louis Seale was 12 years old when his grandfather first took him into the Ardennes forest with a metal detector. Growing up in Belgium in the 1970s, you lived with war's aftermath. For young Jean-Louis, it started as treasure hunting. But as he grew older, as he met Jean-Philippe Spader, another boy obsessed with finding pieces of history, the hobby became something else. It became a calling. By the 1980s, Seale and Spader were known throughout Belgium as the Diggers. They spent weekends in the forest, following old battle maps, interviewing veterans, carefully excavating artifacts. Unlike the looters, Seale and Spader documented everything, tried to return identified items to families. September 1988, a routine search. Seale's detector gave a signal. They dug down and found the remains of Private First Class Alphonse M. Citeau, 99th Infantry Division. He had remained there for 44 years. The discovery changed everything. Bill Warnock, a military historian and Air Force veteran stationed in Germany, read about the discovery. He contacted Seale and Spader with a proposal. What if they deliberately searched for missing soldiers? Thus began the 99th Infantry Division MIA Project. Warnock partnered with Dick Byers, a 99th Division veteran. They compiled a list of 34 missing soldiers and published it. The response was overwhelming. Vernon Swanson, retired, living in suburban Chicago, saw the list. Jack Beckwith's name stared back at him. Vern had been carrying that name for 47 years. He knew exactly where Jack was buried. He contacted Warnock immediately, providing detailed information, and then connected with Byron Whitmarsh, another Company C veteran who had witnessed the burials. Together they painted a picture: 88 Hill, reverse slope, a forward aid station, 3 graves marked with twigs and dog tags. The names: Beckwith, Kokotovich, Reed. In 1991, the search began. The Ardennes forest is vast. Finding 3 graves based on 50-year-old memories seemed impossible. But Warnock found something better than memory. In the National Archives, he discovered an aerial photograph taken in December 1944. It showed 88 Hill, the clearing where the aid station had been. He transferred the image to a modern topographic map. February 1992, Seal and Spader hike into the forest, following Warnock's coordinates. Within hours, they found an M1 rifle half buried in the soil, 3 American combat boots, exactly where Warnock had pinpointed the graves. They dug for days, trenches, test holes, metal detectors screaming, but no human remains, no bones, no dog tags, nothing. The soil had been disturbed, clearly. Graves had been here, but the graves were empty. The team expanded their search radius. Weeks became months. Years passed. They found other soldiers, 12 Americans total over the years, plus 4 Germans. Each recovery kept the hope alive that maybe, someday, they would find Jack and Saul and David. But 88 Hill remained barren. In 1995, David Reed's brother visited the hill. He told Seal and Spader that it was enough. They had tried. The search was abandoned. Jack Beckwith's mother died in 1997 at 93, never knowing where her son rested.
Then, in March 2001, something impossible happened. A relic hunter contacted Seal and Spader with news. He had found dog tags belonging to Jack Beckwith, not on 88 Hill, but somewhere nearby. Jean-Louis Seal felt his blood run cold. If someone had looted Beckwith's grave, then 56 years of waiting would end not with dignity, but with desecration. On March 26, 2001, Seal returned to 88 Hill. No fresh digging. The dog tags must have come from somewhere else. But it planted a seed of doubt. What if we missed something? What if they're still there? April 11, 2001, Wednesday afternoon. Seal decided to check the hill one more time, one final sweep. He crossed a forest trail and continued into a sector just 30 yards from the 1992 excavations. His detector screamed. Seal dug down 12 inches. His shovel struck something that wasn't metal, wasn't rock, a hip bone, human, fresh enough that he could identify it immediately as male, young, American, based on the clothing fibers still clinging to it, and beside it, a brass belt buckle. He dug more carefully now, hands trembling. A few feet away, lying on the surface of the forest floor beneath the pine needles, a dog tag. He picked it up, brushed away decades of corrosion. The name read, Beckwith Jack C. Jean-Louis Seal stood alone in the Ardennes forest, holding a piece of metal that had spent 56 years waiting to be found,
and he wept. He called Jean-Philippe Spetter immediately. By April 17th, all 4 team members were on 88 Hill with excavation equipment. If they had found Beckwith, then Kokotovich and Reed had to be nearby. Another dog tag surfaced on the 17th, just meters away from Beckwith's grave. Kokotovich, Saul. By late afternoon, they had located all 3 burial sites within a 30-yard radius. The markers that Vernon Swanson had placed had rotted away, but the graves themselves remained, shallow depressions barely 3 feet deep. The excavation took 2 days. They worked with archaeological precision, documenting everything. Each soldier had been buried with 1 dog tag around his neck and 1 marking the grave above him. On April 19, 2001, at 1700 hours, Jean-Philippe Spetter sent an email to Vernon Swanson, Byron Whitmarsh, and Bill Warnock. The message was brief. Jack Beckwith, Saul Kokotovich, and David Reed no longer on the MIA list. Bodies found today. Complete report tonight. Vernon Swanson, 75 years old, read the message in his home and broke down. He had been carrying Jack Beckwith's death for 56 years, 4 months, and 3 days. He had promised to come back for him, and now, finally, someone had. The United States Army moves slowly, but it moves with dignity. David B. Roth, director of the U.S. Army Memorial Activity Europe, arrived at 88 Hill on May 14, 2001, with a recovery team and a DNA specialist. They took custody of the remains. Jean-Philippe Spetter had prepared a comprehensive report. The identification was conclusive within days. The remains were shipped to the Central Identification Laboratory in Hawaii for final confirmation. By May 2001, the families had been notified. The Army gave each family a choice: burial in the United States or return to Belgium to rest forever among their fallen comrades at Henri Chapelle American Cemetery. 3 families chose Belgium.
June 22, 2002. The Church of St. Hubert in Aubel, Belgium, packed with hundreds of Belgian citizens. Vernon Swanson was there, now 76 years old. Byron Whitmarsh, Bill Warnock, Jean-Louis Seal, and Jean-Philippe Spetter, who had spent 13 years searching. 3 flag-draped caskets at the altar. The families wept. Veterans saluted. Belgian citizens stood with hands over hearts. After the ceremony, a procession moved through Aubel to the cemetery. American soldiers from German bases served as the honor guard. Taps echoed across the hillside. 3 folded flags presented to 3 families. Private First Class Jack C. Beckwith finally laid to rest at age 78. Private First Class Saul Kokotovich, his wife Martha finally able to visit his grave. Private First Class David A. Reed, no longer missing, no longer unrecoverable. Days later, the families visited 88 Hill. Seal, Spetter, Swanson, Whitmarsh, and Warnock led them into the forest. A German forest ranger named Erich Hernan had erected a simple wooden cross at the site, bearing the names of the 3 soldiers. The families stood in silence, looking at the ground where their loved ones had rested for 56 years. The 99th Infantry Division MIA Project continued for years after 88 Hill. Seal and Spetter, joined by Marc Mariquet and Jean-Luc Menestay, recovered the remains of 12 Americans and 4 Germans between 1988 and 2005. Each name removed from the wall of the missing at Henri Chapelle. They work at their own expense, in their spare time, risking unexploded ordnance. They continue because, as Spetter once said, in a sense, they are still here. More than 80,000 American service members remain missing from World War II. 80,000 names on walls, in files, in family memories. But some can still come home, if someone is willing to search, if someone refuses to forget, if someone believes that a promise made in December 1944, "We will come back for you," still matters in the 21st century. Vernon Swanson passed away in 2012 at age 86. He lived long enough to see Jack Beckwith buried with honors, long enough to fulfill the promise he made. Byron Whitmarsh died in 2015. Dick Byers, the 99th Division veteran who co-founded the MIA Project, died in March 2001, 18 days before the discovery on 88 Hill. Jean-Louis Seale and Jean-Philippe Spetter still walk the forests of Belgium. The 99th Infantry Division Association calls them the Diggers. The families call them heroes. The wooden cross still stands on 88 Hill, weathered now, fading, but bearing 3 names: Beckwith, Kokotovich, Reed. The forest has reclaimed most evidence of the war, but if you stand there in December, you can almost hear it, the distant thunder of artillery, the voices of young men, the promise whispered in a frozen foxhole: "We will come back for you." It took 56 years, but the promise was kept. If their names stayed with you, if this story reminded you that the cost of freedom was paid by people with faces and families, then help us ensure they are never forgotten. Subscribe and keep their legacy alive.